Jesse, Tom, how are you?
Very well, thanks, Tom. Good to be here.
Hey, good to have you. So you didn't get the memo about casual Fridays?
And it's worse because I'm working from home.
That's it. You got no excuse. You probably got shorts on down
Yeah.
the bottom lower.
Business upstairs, party downstairs, Tom.
That's it. Is that a little bit of a purple tint on the shirt, though?
Yeah, it's coming off your jumper.
You know what? This is a bit fluorescent, in all fairness. So, yeah, I'll give you that one. Well, listen, you're jacked to impress. I'll give you that. So I'm impressed. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So, listen, first things first, thank you very much for coming on here and having a conversation with us. It's exactly that. Everyone knows who I am and what I do, so I don't want to bore you with that. But we're all really keen to hear who Jesse is, what you do, and what you'd like to use this conversation for.
That's almost like a blank check, Tom. I appreciate that.
Like, fill out a blank check as much as you can do.
Oh, Tom. Well, mate, thanks for reaching out to do this. I do appreciate it. Had a look at a few of the videos and other things you put up, and I thought they were quite interesting. So I'm glad to be a part of it all, Tom. Obviously, my name's Jesse. I founded a company called Calidus Group just over 5 years ago. I'd been in recruitment before that for a few years, maybe not as long as most, before they jumped into starting their own business. But I really felt that there was an opportunity to just put a bit more care into the process, because where I had been previously, I felt like it was very transactional and very fast. You know, there was no consideration as to like culture fit, what's best for the candidate or the client. And of course, people do consider those things, not to the expense of making the placement, right? And that irked me a lot. And I thought, even if I was just to focus on just improving that bit alone, I think we'd be successful. And, you know, 5 and a bit years on, it's proven to be true, Tom. So what we focus on, we've got a few of us in the business. So we've got a few specialist recruiters focusing on accounting and finance, HR, sales and marketing, and also professional services roles within the software industry. So it's pretty broad. There's lots of cross-pollination, but keeping each of our consultants in those lanes has worked well for us to be able to add a bit more value for the clients that we support. And they're really busy industries. You know, some ebb and flow over the times we've been working in them, of course, but we've built some really solid and deep relationships in those spaces with clients and candidates. And look, just in the last sort of 8 weeks alone, we've helped 25 people find new work homes, you know, and reflecting on that with the team yesterday in our sales meeting, just to think that those people were in a job that they weren't satisfied in, right, for whatever reason. And we found them an opportunity that pays more, better career prospects, and everything else that comes with that. So that impact that we've been able to have really just is quite gratifying, you know, because the process, you know, recruitment, you know, Tom, it has its ups and downs, but to really focus on that and creating those good outcomes is something that we've been really passionate about and like to celebrate from time to time. Can't be all about business, right?
That's it. And you know what? So obviously I'm long in the tooth and recruitment, which is why I've got less hair than you. But no, 2 days the same. But I remember back when I was employed, and I won't name the business right now, but it's one of the larger players. Now, the big floor of recruiters, okay, and they're doing very well. There's no issue there. And they've got the whiteboards here and there and what have you. And I noticed there's 2 types of recruiters out there, okay? You got the ones that, they all do well, don't get me wrong, okay? You got the ones that focus on the financials first. So they want the naming lights, one up, and I've just done this placement, it's worth this much, I've smashed my target, blah, 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 blah. And then you've got the other ones where they're actually initially buoyed by, actually, I've really managed to help that client out. This candidate's got that, as you said, the work home, I like that terminology, and they've had an improvement in their set of circumstances, and I've made that happen, okay? So they take that in first, and then obviously they'll say, "Oh, well, I've earned this," and quite rightly so, you know. And watching the careers of those 2 sets of recruiters, the ones that are more empathetic to the situation, circumstances individually, to these people, are the ones that have gone on to do great things. Okay, and the others were more transactional. Yes, they're still being transactional, doing very well, and maybe doing other things. but there was a difference. And so when you was employed yourself, I think you said 4 years before.
Yeah, well, just a bit less actually. And I worked in 3 different places. They were quite large, different industries, and very metrics and KPI driven. So I actually came from a real estate background. So, that was in most of my 20s. I was selling real estate around the North Shore of Sydney. And that was awesome. It was a really good way to learn how to deal with people and to negotiate, right? And to identify need and all those things. But to be honest, working on weekends, on Saturdays, through that time was tough, relationships, social things, this and that. And I had thought to myself towards the end of my real estate career that recruitment isn't too dissimilar in the way that you have, a vendor, and a buyer, right? And you need to manage that process. It's not too dissimilar to when you have somebody hiring and somebody looking for a job, right? And just how you support that process end to end. Those skills are very transferable. So I thought maybe I should dip my toe in the water there, and I did. And it was a bit of a rude awakening, I suppose, because I didn't consider all the different angles about how it works. I was used to being out of the office a lot, like doing open homes and being on the road a bit more. And obviously recruitment, apart from sort of the interviews that you have and the clients that you visit, it's very much a desk focused role, right? But then very heavily phone driven. And so the places I did work were excellent at instilling those sort of daily metrics and KPIs to be successful, right? Minimum calls, minimum this, and this, and this. And I quite like that structure. So I carried that on. And I worked with some really great people along the way there. I did get the impression that there was a lot of pressure through the leadership team, through the team managers onto the recruiters just to make money, right? It's a business, and that's not any fault of anybody, right? Yeah, we're in business, right? And that has to be an element to it. But I think that the pressure around just getting a deal done outweighed the sometimes what the right thing was to do, right? And after a while, you think, geez, like I know what you're talking about, those 2 different style of recruiters, and I think at times we can be both, but you have to sit back and think, well, remove what's best for you out of it, because it's not about you at the end of the day. It's about the people involved in that situation, right? And it's not a transaction, right? It's people's lives. So the person hiring, if it's not a great culture fit or a great skills fit or a combination of those two, the person hiring is expended all of that time going through the process, right? And then onboarding that person and then training that person for however long. And then for some reason it doesn't work out in a short period of time. And it's hugely detrimental to their business, right? So you're stuffing it up on that front. And then for the candidate who, you've built some trust with, who trusts you to help, and they assume that you're telling them everything, right? That's an assumption of the trust you build with them when you start working with them. And you shouldn't break that, right? And so I hold that very dear to my heart. And with everybody we bring into Calidus Group, that's the conversations we have at the beginning. It's our cultural DNA, you could say, Tom. And there's times where, of course, you think, I know if I tell this to either party, it's probably going to stuff the whole thing up, right? And so you do have a moment like, and I always go back to what's the right thing to do, and that's the question you have to look, I guess, the lens you have to look through into every decision. Otherwise, I feel like we're being a bit. We couldn't look back and be quite as proud of ourselves, right? And I think that may at times slow us down and might not make as many placements as other recruiters out there because of that, but I'm okay with that. I think over time we'll reap the rewards of that, and so far that's been shown to be true.
And you're absolutely right. I think that's essentially the definition of integrity, is who you are when no one's looking, and you have those opportunities. We all do it in every which way, shape and form, doing the right thing. And sometimes it's something in hustle or hunter based industries, then that's probably tarnished, where too many people are incentivized to cut that corner and maybe take that long term, and then gives it a bad name. Real estate, where you came from, is no exception from that, and what have you. But similar to real estate, and you found those synergies there, I always tell people, candidates in this case, that their biggest investment in their life is their career, and that would include running a business. Okay, because you're looking at your time, effort, money in some cases, return. Okay, return on investment year on year. And it has to be there, and that's bigger than real estate. That's bigger than your property. It's probably a close second, and that's why people keep the cards close to their chest, and they're not particularly trusting at first and what have you. So if you're treating it the same way, and treating it with the sensitivity that it deserves and the respect that it deserves, then you're probably onto doing things the right way.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. It's interesting, when you talk about why, people, that their career is their biggest investment, because it's true, right? And I think at times, when people get caught up in a job for a few years and they don't know what else is out there, as recruiters, we assume that everybody knows what's happening in the market, how things work, what's going on, what their options are, but people don't. I've been, when I was employed, I've been a sales rep before I was a real estate agent. I've been in different jobs in my time. I've been a roofer and a lawnmower and all sorts of things, right? So and I found my way here, but through lots of different industries and trial and error, right? And now I encourage others to do the same, depending on where you are in the journey and what's possible for you financially. Of course, you have to be sensible, but don't stick around in a job that doesn't bring you fulfillment, whatever that looks like. And that fulfillment looks different for everybody, or success, right? But you have to sit back and think of what's important to me. And if you're really miserable and you're just showing up for money, there's better things out there, and it's probably worth just spending some time dusting off your resume, right? And just seeing what's out there and having a chat with a few recruiters, or just putting your hat in the ring for a few roles, because you never know what different could look like and how much better that could be, right? The grass isn't always greener, so you have to tread with caution. But I think I always tell candidates that you should always be open for opportunities, right? Because being a recruiter, Tom, how many people do you reach out to sort of in a headhunting exercise in a week? And a lot of people say, oh, no, thanks, I'm interested. And I often say, oh, that's cool. I completely respect that. But you don't really know what the opportunity is. You could be missing out on something, fabulous, without being too facetious, of course. And that sort of makes people stop and check, because initially candidates think we're trying to sell them something, right? I get an extra few seconds because I don't have an English accent. They don't know I'm a recruiter yet.
All right, one nil you.
But honestly, yeah, and I tell people that, and I think that there's some truth in that fact that there is other things out there, and if you're unhappy in your role for whatever reason, there is a company that's doing things differently out there, and you can find them, and you could probably do better there, because it's all about the environment that you're in. You can't thrive in an environment that's stifling, or if your boss is a micromanager, or the culture is really toxic, or you don't know where you're heading, because how stressful work can be, Tom. If you don't know that it's leading to something, it's just a grind for grind's sake for your paycheck, that gets old fast, right? So you need to know as a person in a company, what's this all heading toward? And if the company isn't providing that, I'd say reach out to a recruiter or to some companies and get moving, because there's better things out there, right, Tom?
I think so, and I think I agree with pretty much everything you said there. I think what fascinates me when we're talking about what I would classify as the world of work, okay, so we're talking about it a little bit more holistically. We've got the client side, we've got the candidate side, and we're looking at the sort of the nuances of it. Is what surprises me a lot is that people don't really know themselves, okay, and I don't mean that in an arrogant sense. Is sometimes people have got so accustomed to a career that's what they do, that they don't know any different. They could have been fantastic at something else, and they never took that leap of faith, they never took that risk, if you like. Or they genuinely really don't know themselves. They don't know what their genuine capabilities are. They're doing something which has a high admin focus, and they've got good at it, but it's not their strength. They haven't assessed themselves. Hold a minute, well, I'm okay at that. I'm actually outstanding at this. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well. And people don't like change. They like their comfort. One of the first things I noticed coming from the UK to here, when it comes to careers that are respected, is in the UK, they respect generalists a lot more. Okay. So it's See, your eyebrow says it all just then. Hey, reacted to it. So those people that do change and what have you, they've changed the industries, they've progressed and they've done what they've done. They had a lot more value because of the transferable skills and what they picked up in different places, whether they're mowing lawns, doing the roof, and so forth. Okay, so bring all those little components, bring it together. You know what? That's going to be really interesting. First thing I noticed in Australia is they like a suit micro specialist. Okay, I've got one person who's done that, mastered it, and that's it. They both have pros and cons. But what you're suggesting for people to do is more what was more to what's culturally normal in the UK.
Yeah, and it can be risky because you can't do it too many times in Australia, right? Like you have to know that that's the path you want to follow, because if depending on where you're at in your career, it can be detrimental and you can end up starting from scratch a few too many times, right? Which again is okay depending on your financial situation, right? You know, a lot of people, a lot of companies, unfortunately, their decision is made by, you know, when they scan a CV, they look at education, right, company and title, right? And if those things don't make sense, if 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, you know, then it's like, oh no, when there could be a really strong person that has had a bit more of a diverse background and experience that brings so much more perspective to a role than somebody else who has followed a more traditional pathway. They're both good, don't get me wrong, but I think those people miss out more than they should here. And that's where it comes down to really helping candidates in being able to articulate what they do and what they're good at, right? Because I think as well, that's a skill,
Yes.
right? In being able to, when you're sitting in front of somebody interviewing for a role, if it's your first time in a while, and some people it's 5 or 10 years, right? You don't know what to say, right? You can read a few like blog posts about how to prepare, you know, the STAR method, and those things work great. But if the quality of what you're saying doesn't make sense and doesn't cut through, especially if you're trying to compete against somebody who's got a more traditional pathway for that role, and you can't articulate why you're as good, if not better, right? Then that's going to be to your detriment. So that's one thing I always coach candidates around. It's like, well, what's your pitch? You know, you got to be pitch fit.
It's
Yeah.
true, and I think where people do go wrong with this quite often is they forget about putting themselves in the other person's shoes. So if you put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes, what's their mindset? Let's put ourselves there for a moment. And really, what they do is they're doing a credit check on your CV. Quite right, the scanning. You know, it's maximum 6 seconds really when they're going through them. So that needs to compute, if you like. They're looking: is this person going to make me look bad? Are they going to cost me money? Are they? You know, I know what I need. Is this that person? You know, and if it could be a maybe that might get in front of, but you just want to be getting in front of them. Okay. And the same thing goes once you're meeting them, they already know what's there. You just need to see if you stand out, if you could talk to that language, as opposed to it's all about me. I need a job. Okay, well, you know, and we hear this all the time, and it's like no one's going to like hearing that, and it's not going to serve you well. And you could, if communicating correctly, actually be the right person.
Yeah, and you have to help the hiring manager in that case overcome their fear of stuffing it up, right? Because there's an easy choice probably in some cases, and then there's a more riskier choice. And often they go with the safest choice because, you know, got people to report to. You know, why do you hire that person with that? Why you have 2 CVs and you chose them? And, you know, they don't want to be responsible or accountable for that in case it goes wrong.
Yes.
But if it does make sense and your gut feeling is pulling you towards that other person, I encourage everybody to take that leap of faith. How often do you tell a candidate that they say, oh, look, it's exciting, it feels right, but I just don't know if the timing's right or this other thing? It's like, well, take a leap of faith. If everything else makes sense and your gut's telling you to do it, somehow your instincts always know, just do it, right? And it doesn't work out 100% of the time. But most of the time it does. And those riskier decisions are the ones that generally pay off in my experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it goes back to your exact point earlier, where your terminology of being open to opportunities, which we know what that means. Okay. But are people really open to opportunities? So it comes down to a mindset shift in general, just in general life. If you're closed-minded or open-minded, and if you stay closed-minded for life, that serves in some components of your life. If you stay that way, then you're going to miss out on opportunities that are there around you constantly. Okay, and we're not picking up on them. Okay, whereas if you're open and you're genuinely aware of opportunities and you have that surface level dialogue, or just actually, I'm going to go in that shop that I've never been in, but for some reason, all these things just change. Things just, you start to get lucky. Things just happen, and it's like, and if you, in retrospect, you look back, if I didn't go in there that one day at this one time, or I didn't say yes that one person when I'm always saying no to everyone else, then I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Big time. Yeah.
So it's definitely a mindset shift for sure.
It is a mindset shift. When I resigned from my last job to start this, talk about a leap of faith. Like everyone was telling me, you probably need more experience before you start a company. It's the first company I've started, and probably need more recruitment experience. What are you thinking? You got bills, you got stuff you have to pay, this and that. And I thought, I'm ready. I'm done. I want to take this risk, and there's been times I've hugely regretted that decision. But I've never given up on it, right? And there's been really tough times, but there's been really good times. And after a while, those peaks and troughs, they start to level out somewhat. And I think one thing my dad always says to me, he says, just don't hang on too tight, because good and bad times, they're just an imposter, right? It's like you can't hang on to either end too tightly. You just got to ride the waves. And that's been really helpful for me, just to navigate all of that along the way. And it's the same for people in their careers. I think there's going to be, at the moment, there are lots of people have been let go because of restructuring and layoffs and things across Australia and all different markets. So some of those candidate pools are really quite full, and it's competitive out there in certain sectors. And it's hard to stand out when you've got 10 other people with similar experience to you. How do you stand out? And even get an interview. And when you're applying to some of these big companies and they've got these screening tools and your CV isn't optimized properly, it's like, well, hang on a second, like, what are we trying to achieve here? And it's very frustrating for some people, and I really empathize with them because of those reasons. And it is just cyclical, and things do turn around and get better, right? But it is taking longer at times for some people to find work right now. And I tell them, you need to treat the job hunt now as a full-blown sales campaign. You cannot apply for 5 jobs every morning with the alerts that you get and sit back and think job done. No. You need to be super proactive. Who can you reach out with to connect with? Who can you call directly? Who can you email? How can you get on the front foot and get ahead of the other people who aren't doing that, who are sitting back waiting for the call? Like you said, the more action you take, the luckier you get, right? The same goes. It's transferable to everywhere, including job hunting. And so I really do encourage people to look at it through that lens, which is more uncomfortable, right? Especially when you're feeling a bit defeated, if things haven't gone your way, been laid off, that has an effect for you mentally. Was it me? Was it them? Is it a combination of those? So a question of self-worth starts to come in. Then you might have a few interviews and not get chosen, and it starts to beat down. So you don't feel like picking up the phone saying, hey, I'm Jesse and I'm the best HR manager you've ever, seen. You should hire me. You're not going to feel like doing that because you don't have that self-belief at that time. So I think you need to also remove that negative self-talk as much as possible, and know that you've built a good career out there. You do have really good skills, and you will find that place that's right for you where you'll thrive. But maybe you just have to look a bit longer than you want to, and that's okay, but you'll get there. And remember that. And so I think that's really important for people to hear.
You're absolutely right. It's the cliche, but it's a solid cliche, because it's so true. Is every no takes you closer to a yes, and that there is to resonate with those people that have had their ego hit a bit, their self-esteem's taken a knock, rejections sinking in and affecting their next step. And we don't want it to self-sabotage to cost that next step that could be the right one. Eventually there's a yes, and you might block that yes with wearing all the other rejections and circumstances that have happened. Your dad's advice was fantastic as well, by the way. You can thank him from me on that one as well. I appreciate that one. But back on the CVs with the candidate pools is actually quite interesting, because we both agreed the biggest investment in your life is your career. Okay. We do a lot of work with students as they graduate, masters, bachelors, whatever. Okay. And some of them from overseas. Well, actually quite a lot of them are. There's a big market here in Australia. And they spend maybe 2 to 4 years, a huge amount of cash and time and effort, as we're talking the key ingredients earlier, onto making the formulating their career of choice.
Mm.
You'll know as well as I do, when they graduate, we get an abundance of the same CV.
Mm.
So they'll graduate at the same time with the same qualifications and with the exact same template. They've been given for free by their careers advisor.
Mm.
And what I liked about some of the things you said about being optimized for CRMs and CV and what have you, you don't tend to get that advice too much with career advisors because they're not frontline.
Mm.
Okay. Now, you and I are both in the recruitment game, so we know that CV needs to be as polished and as optimized as possible for it to function with the hiring manager for us to get interview. Otherwise, we can't go to the next steps. So we don't have a business. So we know what works, what doesn't work. So I'll find the best career advice out there, those ones that are dealing with clients on a day-to-day basis, because we've got a vested interest. That's real. Okay. And so I always feel sorry for the graduates that come out, and there's hundreds all at the same time. It's I can picture the CV now. I know what it looks like. Get given the same template, it's for free, and it's all nice to have nice stuff for free, but they can't stand out with a template. It's impossible. It's like playing communist Monopoly or something. It's just you just pass go. There's nothing to buy. Okay, it's the same. All right. But then, so we try to help those people. We've got some career packages which are really powerful but accessible to people at that stage of their career. But the uptake's actually strangely low, which I'm not ashamed of saying, because they don't want to spend any money because they've had something for free. Our debate is, well, you've already spent, let's just go best case scenario is 2 years, spent 2 years, maybe 50 grand. What's $100? You've got everything else. Now he needs the key to go through the door.
Yeah.
And end up doing other work just to keep the lights on and keep the roof over their head. And then you get this horrible looking gap on their CV, which may even cost them their visa in some cases as well. So it really, really does impact their lives significantly, because they wouldn't spend that extra little step, that final step, make themselves stand out in that marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ones that do are probably the ones they're getting the jobs that everybody wants by taking that extra step, getting a little bit more uncomfortable, whether that's financially or time or both, right? Just they've put in the hard yards. If they've moved countries, they've studied, all of that. I often reflect on the fact that I'm just so fortunate to be born here in Australia, to have the opportunities in front of me. Imagine trying to move country. The visa process is a debacle, right? How many people on a visa do you speak with and hear about what they've gone through and the money they've expended? It's just horrible. It really is. To then go through all the uni stuff, to then be stuck at the other end of that without a guaranteed job, to then have to go do some other menial sort of work in the meantime. It doesn't add up, right? It's super tough. So I think, given that it is so hard, anything that you can do to supercharge your potential to land what you want, do it, because you've come this far. Try everything,
And you're quite right. Not everybody can do it. Obviously, there's things that separate us. For me, I always envisioned that take up to be higher, because it's logical. But as you're quite right, those that do, they fly. They've done internships, they've got themselves in here, they've done this, they've been proactive, they haven't been displayed any sense of entitlement, and they've just realized, well, I'm either at the beginning of my career or I'm from overseas. Okay, both have a hindrance. Okay, I now need to work twice as hard and twice as smart as someone who's local or has the experience to get where I need to be. And just accept that challenge, bring it on, roll your sleeves up.
Well, nothing's given to you, right? Nothing worthwhile, Tom. So
Yes.
It's not meant to be easy, right? And if people are a bit dismayed because it is so hard, that's how it's designed to be, right? Like it's that hard for everyone. That's one thing. It's not just for that one person. Like, there's all different circumstances that come into play, Tom. But I think that there's wisdom in just knowing that everybody else has to go through the same thing. And so the ones that are willing to get the most uncomfortable and take the most action to reach their goals, as always, are the ones that are going to get what they want, right? And I think that can be a harsh reality sometimes, and a hard pill to swallow, right? But I think if you just embrace that, then you can't really lose long term, regardless of of where you land because you're doing the right stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Well, I just realised what the time is there, and I've also, just whilst you were talking now, I drifted off, nothing personal.
I have a habit of harping on.
I just realised you're actually the first recruiter I've engaged with on this. Okay, and recruiters tend to lock horns themselves. It's dog eat dog, and not particularly friendly to each other all the time. But what I find is quite nice is it's actually very easy to talk, and we can continue talking for quite some time on these same little things that we're noticing. We're on the same page, which does help. Not everyone is, but we haven't had enough of a story from you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to book you back up for 2.0 as well. And I really want to try and get to understand the businessman behind the business and what have you. The problem is we have gone recruiter to recruiter, and anybody listening to that, I actually firmly believe there's loads of nuggets there which people can take away and can, as you said, supercharge the career and what have you. And there's some absolute gold nuggets there for them. So I'm very grateful for those. But I do feel that we've neglected Jesse in this one. So we'll get you back with your purple shirts.
If you send me a purple shirt, I'd love to come and talk about myself for as long as you let me.
All right, you've got a deal there. So I'll just see. I'm recording this, as you know, so we've got it. It's there. This is contractual.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome, Tom. Well, it's been really nice to get to know you, mate. I appreciate you inviting me to come on.
That's it. My pleasure. Thanks for coming. And any anecdotes you want to share with us before we sign off?
Oh, I just say, if it's tough out there, just keep going, keep showing up, and press on.
Love it. Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
Take care. See you, Tom.
Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you did enjoy it, had lots of takeaways from it. As before, please subscribe below so you can keep on top of any new releases we have. And also, if you would like to have your story told, just reach out with me and I'd love to give you that platform. My best email address is tom@purplepatchconsulting.com. Thank you.